Shalom, Kahal Yahweh, Bashem Yahweh Shai, Bashem Rakar Kodash. Double honors to the elder apostles and elder bishops of GMS, including the elders that came before them to tell us the truth. And shalom and salutation to all the brothers that pushing the word of truth and in sincerity, the hopeful elect family of the day. And with Brother Yahshua back with the WW3 Daily Update. Shalom and salutation to you. Okay, so we're gonna go into the valley of Yahweh Shaphat. Jehoshaphat. Jump in Jehoshaphat. Right? If I type that in right now, let's see. And this is just for shits and for giggles. Let's see. Bear with me. Like that. Let's go here. Let's do this. Jumpin', Jumpin, Jeho. Look at that. See how it comes right up? Jumpin' Jehoshaphat. Okay. Let's see. Classic. Whoa. Anyway, this guy says that Jumpin' Jehoshaphat. Look, they got this guy. Yosemite Sam is the one that says jumping. Well, where does that come from? Okay. Great Jumpin' Jehoshaphat. What does that mean? Why is this in a cartoon? Let's look at this real quick.
This morning, I turned on the telly, and all I can say is, Jumpin' Jehoshaphat, yeehaw!
Okay? Okay? What does it say? Jumpin' Jehoshaphat, Yosemite Sam. Looney Tunes. All right? Now, let's go back. Joel 3. Joel 3 and 2. All right? Let's start at 1. What does this say? The caption says, the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, judges the nations. Okay? Now, the Lord, his name is Yahweh. Okay? Remember that. For behold, in those days and in that time, which is talking about now, in these days and in this time, when I, who's I, Yahweh, shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, right? I will also, who's I, Yahweh, I will also gather all nations and bring them down into the valley of Jumpin' Jehoshaphat. See that? What is the Most High's name? Yahweh. So if you take Jeho, as in Jehovah, it's not Jehovah, because there's no J in Hebrew. It's Yahweh Shaphat. What does Shaphat mean? Judgment. Yahweh's judgment. God's judgment. The valley of God's judgment. Okay? He said he's going to gather all nations and bring them down into the valley of God's judgment. And will plead with them. What does it mean to plead? Do you plead guilty or do you plead innocent? That takes place in a court, right? Now, when we switch to these different versions, we did this yesterday. The NLT, I will gather the armies, right here, all nations armies, okay? The Russian army, the Ukrainian army, the American army, the British army. Listen, I will gather all nations' armies. I will gather the armies of the world, all of them. Where? Into the valley of Jehoshaphat. Why? What does Jehoshaphat mean? God's what? Judgment. Shaphat. Shapatim. There will I judge them. I will enter into judgment. So the Most High, Yahweh, or in this case, Jehovah, Hove, right? Some blasphemous shit. I will gather the armies of the world into the valley of Jehoshaphat. Where is the valley of Jehoshaphat? Specifically, it's in the land of Israel. Okay? But metaphorically and spiritually, it's the whole Middle East. What you know today as the Middle East. That's the valley of Jehoshaphat. So what is going on right now today in the valley of Yehoshaphat? Okay? We go to redacted. Today, U.S. and ISIS truth exposed in Syria. Where is Syria? In the valley of Yehoshaphat, where God is going to gather all nations' armies. Okay? Now they're going to say something very specific. Why did the U.S. go into Iran? And what did they do while they were in Iran? Okay. Answer, they built some of the biggest army bases on the face of the planet. Why did they do that when they invaded Iran back in, what was it, 2002, 2003? Remember when Saddam Hussein knocked those buildings? Oh, well, he didn't do that. But they went to Iran anyway. They invaded, bombed, and strafed the hell out of Iran. Not Iran, Slovakia, Iraq. Okay? They went into Iraq, which is, right, very near the Valley of Jehoshaphat. And they set up army bases in Iraq when they invaded Iraq. The biggest army bases on the face of the earth. Why? Why did they do that? Because they need a jumping off point. Right? It's hard to launch aircraft, right? And send tanks all the way from America into the Middle East. So what do? You steal somebody's land, you set up bases right there for the conflict and the war that's going to take place right there in the Middle East. Okay, let's get that real quick. Let's say biggest army bases. U.S. Biggest U.S. army bases, right? In IRAQ. Let's see what comes up. The luxuries of Bagram's Air Base. The U.S. military is everywhere. Where's the Middle East? All over Europe. Okay. What do we got? The largest bases in the United States and in the world. I bet you if we went through, they're going to be right there in the Valley of Jehoshaphat. Okay, where else are they? Let's watch this. Okay, so this is a redacted U.S. and ISIS truth exposed in Syria as America builds what? More bases. Where? Syria. In the valley of. Why are they building all these army bases in the valley of Yehoshaphat? What did God say He's going to do? I will gather the armies of the world. We're seeing that this right here means this right here. America builds more bases. Where? In the valley of Yehoshaphat. That's nothing less than God gathering the armies of the world into the valley of Jehoshaphat. Why? So that they can be judged. They're being led into an ambush. Right? Just like Pharaoh, when he found himself in the middle of the Red Sea and the water started moving. It was an ambush. This is the same thing. Okay? And what was Pharaoh doing? He was trying to fight against Yahweh. He got his ass wiped out. Okay? You don't try to fight against the Most High. You set your ass up for what? For judgment. Okay? Back to this. Listen.
It just happened in Syria, a country which I think is incredibly important for a number of reasons and really important to cover here on this show. But the mainstream media totally ignores the story. They totally ignore what happened this weekend because they were too busy watching this crap. Watch.
Distraction.
This is OutSystems.
Slovakia for the commercial. All right. There's a war going on in America too, civil war.
Extreme MAGA Republicans, extreme MAGA ideology, MAGA Republicans are...
Yeah, wall-to-wall coverage of that instead of actual stories that really matter to people. Before we get into what happened in Syria, let me ask you a simple question. We'll put this up here in the chat and see how many of you can actually answer this question. Does the United States have any military outposts in Syria? Yes or no? Just a thought experiment. I'm just going to take a sip of water.
Get a little bit of water.
Just getting a little bit of water. You guys answer yes, no, B. Let us know in the chat here.
B.
Yes or no. No, that there was a yes or no question. There was no B in it. There was no A or B. Okay, so a lot of people saying yes. A lot of people saying yes. You can say in the chat what you guys think yes. Overwhelmingly yes so far. Okay, if you answered yes, you are correct. You got the first part of our thought experiment done. The next question. Here, let's put this next question up on the screen. Now we have a screen for you. How many illegal military bases does the U.S. have in Syria? Here's the question. How many illegal military, and I say illegal because the government absolutely does not want us there. So we have no right to be in Syria. How many illegal military bases does the United States have in Syria? Is it A, 1, B, 2, C, 7, or D, 28 military bases? What do you guys think? How many in the chat? You guys just weigh in. Give us your thoughts. I'm watching it.
Knowing the U.S. military, my guess is 28. I don't know, but that's my guess.
28, 20. A lot of people saying D. A lot of people saying 7. Okay. The correct answer, if you guessed 28, you are correct.
Why? What's going on? 28 military. That's in Syria. How many in Iraq? Could be a few because they're so big. Okay? Why? Because the Most High Yahweh said, I will gather the armies of the world into the valley of Jehoshaphat. Why is he gathering? Why are all those army bases there? Because they're about to be judged. What does it mean to be judged? They're about to be judged guilty as charged. And then they're going to be wiped out. It's an ambush. What happened to Pharaoh? He was led into an ambush. The Most High wiped his ass out. Hey, everything that was written aforetime is written for our learning. All right? There's nothing new under the sun, and history repeats itself.
According to the Syrian president, Bashar al-Assad, there are 28 U.S. bases or outposts that are currently deployed with U.S. forces in Syria.
Yeah, but that's the Americans. That's not Egypt. Pharaoh was the Pharaoh of Egypt. Yeah, he was, but guess what? America is Egypt. Okay? America is spiritually known as Egypt, as Babylon the Great, as Nineveh, as Assyria. And we'll get to that.
Now, the U.S. doesn't like to admit any of this, and they only kind of basically say that they've got 2 military bases there, right? So it's kind of a discrepancy. We have actually separate reporting from multiple news agencies talking in the dozens of military bases are out. So here's my thought. If you have forces in another country, and even if it's a little shed, that's an outpost. If you've got military U.S. soldiers at a little house, a little shed, a big warehouse, a big building, it doesn't really matter. You're in their country illegally. So it really doesn't matter what you want to call it, right? So according to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, 28 U.S. bases or outposts.
Jeez.
And U.S. soldiers currently deployed there. They don't mention it or admit it or not, and it doesn't matter. They're illegal. Now the U.S. this week quietly announced another building. They're building a brand new, what they are saying is their third big military base.
Why? Because God is gathering the armies of the world into the valley of Jehoshaphat.
No. Okay, third, right? 28, 3, somewhere in between is the truth, right? Nevertheless, here's how the Syria News Report put it. The U.S. forces, this is a Chinese news report, established a third military base in Syria's northeastern province of Hazaka on Saturday, in a war monitor reported. The new military base was set up in the village of Nakara, 3 kilometers southwest of the city of Kamashili, in the Hasaka province, and the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said. All 3 U.S. bases in this area are located in areas controlled by the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, the Britain-based Watchdog said. The U.S. forces have established multiple military bases in Syria since entering the war-torn country in 2014, with its largest one in the Al Omar oil field in the eastern province. The Syrian government has repeatedly urged the withdrawal of U.S. forces from the country, referring to them as occupation forces that entered Syria without its consent.
Why? What is, see, America just does that. Didn't they do that in Iraq? All right, so if you want to watch the rest of this, okay, it's 22 minutes long. We're in 6 minutes, 15 seconds, all right? Redacted today, U.S. and ISIS truth exposed in Syria, okay? Now, what I want to do real quick, because I'm not, of course, they've hidden the truth about, okay? They've hidden the truth of, with respect to videos, how many Iraqi, let's see, how many U.S. military bases are in Iraq? Question. Let's see if this will give us the runaround or get straight to it. Okay. And we need a big old map too, because I want Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Syria, Jordan. See, what is right over here? If we had a big enough map, I would show you that right over here is Israel. So all of this is the valley of Yehoshaphat. It's the Middle East. If they would show where Israel is, see how they don't show Israel? Because that's what everything is about. Everything is about Israel. I'll go into a map of the Middle East. Why are all these maps not? Here we go. There's Israel. Okay. Here's Egypt. Here's where Pharaoh got, got his ass whooped, right? In the Valley of Yehoshaphat, God's judgment. Okay, so here's Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, all Middle East. It's actually Africa, even though this is Africa. Even though there's a river, right there's the Red Sea. There's a different land now. Okay. Let's call it the Middle East. This is the Valley of Jehoshaphat. This is where God is gathering all the armies of the world. Now, there are many fronts in World War III. Okay? There are many fronts. But the main front is where God said he's going to do, where he's going to judge the nations. So, this cannot be true. 28 in Syria, right? You just read right here. All right, the United States Department of Defense has a large number of temporary, so what, bases in Iraq, most type, the jumping off point. Right? See how they're not even saying it? They're going around it. Okay, so it says, at the height of the occupation, the United States had that many troops in 505 bases throughout Iraq. How many now? 505. Why? Okay. They danced around the number. So it could be more or less than this. But that's a Salaki. That's a big number. It's an effing big number right there. What? United States had this many troops stationed in 505 bases throughout Iraq. All right? Due to international military intervention against ISIL, ISIS, whatever you want to call it, personnel have returned to old bases and new bases created. What? That's a little confusion right there. Control of many U.S. operated bases was transferred to the Iraqi government during 2020, 2021 U.S. troop withdrawal. They're trying to make it seem as though, well, then they got out of there. Look at, here's a list of airfields, camps. Look at this. Woo! In alphabetical order. Look at this. Camp Top Gun in Mosul. Camp Warhorse. Camp Whitehorse. Camp Red Horse. Combat Outpost. Look at this. Now, what is this? What do you see right here? We'll end on this. Okay. What? More of the same. Joel 3 and 2. I will gather the armies of the world into the valley of Jehoshaphat. There will I judge them for harming my people, my special possession, for scattering my people among the nations, for dividing them. Syria is in the valley of Jehoshaphat. Iraq is in the valley of Jehoshaphat. Jordan, okay? The Middle East. That's where the bulk of World War III, right? You've got these skirmishes happening over in Eastern Europe or whatever. It's going to culminate into what God said he's going to do. I will gather all nations and bring them back. Don't we see that happening? What are all them army bases do? Right? Who does the Most High hate the most? Babylon the Great. Let's qualify that America is known, right, as Egypt. Right? 11. Revelation 11 and 8. Let's get this out. Let's pull this. One of my favorite pictures. Just to give you an illustration. All right, here you have Moses. Who's behind Moses down here in that picture? The children of Israel. Right? What's this? What's that doing? Well, that's what part of the Red Sea. This thing. Okay. That would represent God, right? And the angels, and the one you ignorantly call Jesus. That's what this represents. That's who was in that chariot. Pillar of fire by night, pillar of cloud by day. There he is. How did the Red Sea open? Here's what they're not saying. Okay? Moses uses the children of Israel for bait. Now, this is God's operation. Understand that. Moses walks through the Red Sea, which is also known as the strike zone. Right? This is the strike zone. What is this? This is an ambush plan. Moses marches the children of Israel through the Red Sea. They're the bait. What does Pharaoh do? Pharaoh chases right in after the children of Israel, get to the other side, and then what happens? The ambush. So this would be known, this would be seen today as the Valley of Yahushua. Here comes the judgment. He's going to lead all the armies of the world where? To the valley. Get it? But that happened in Egypt. You know what happened? What you call the Red Sea, the Reed Sea, whatever you. Where? In the Valley of Jehoshaphat. Okay? Revelation 11 and 8. Their dead bodies, whose dead body? The Israelites, will lie in the street of the great city. Babylon the Great City. King James here. Spiritually, and their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt. What? There's Egypt. This is talking about whose dead bodies? The Israelites, Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, and Seminole Indians. Where are the Native Americans? They're in America. Do the Native Americans know that they're the children of God? 12 tribes of the nation of Israel? No. They're dead to that. African Americans think that they're Africans, and they're not. They're the children of Israel. They're dead. Shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom. Do homosexuals have rights here? In Egypt? Sure they do. You can't even use the F word anymore. They have rights. What pronouns are you using nowadays? What was going on in Sodom? What does the word sodomy mean? Sodom and Egypt, okay, where also our Lord was crucified. Okay. Back to this. This happened to who? The Egyptians. Who's the Egyptians? The Americans are going to be right here. And this history repeating itself. Yeah, a bunch of other nations, armies, all the other armies of the world are going to get taken down in the ambush too. But guess what? The Egyptians are going to be right there. The spiritual Egyptian. who are the Americans. Who's got these army bases? Who's got those army bases in Iraq? The Egyptians. The Americans are over there, who are spiritually the Egyptians, about to get caught in the strike zone. All right, so enough for today. This has been the World War III Daily Update. World War III is quickly on its way. Get that real quick. Revelation 11 and 14, the second woe is past, and behold, the third will come quickly with that.